That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
This was the moment that humanity finally set foot on a world that was not Earth. It is the moment that is forever preserved in the minds of all, and so it should be. 50 years on, it is difficult to think of an achievement to match it. As we approach the 50th anniversary of the first step on the lunar surface, I wanted to give a bit more information to people who may not know much beyond the one small step phrase and being able to name one or possibly two of the astronauts. Over the next week, I will post a number of videos on the Apollo 11 mission, which may help in your appreciation of this great feat. Today's video is all about the Saturn V rocket and how this fantastic machine, which was actually a collection of different rockets and crafts all stuck together, brought us to the moon and back. And today, July 16th, is a good day to publish this video, as it is the 50th anniversary of the launch of the Apollo 11 mission in 1969. The Saturn V rocket was 111 meters high and weighed 2.8 million kilograms. That's equal to the weight of 400 adult male elephants. It was effectively three rockets, one stacked on top of the other, with the lunar spacecraft stacked on top of them. And right at the top was the launch escape system. This small rocket on the very top was designed to lift the command module, where the astronauts were seated, away from the rest of the rocket should anything go wrong during the launch. Each stage of the main rocket was used to get the lunar craft on a trajectory path to the moon. The lunar spacecraft itself was made up of three parts: the lunar module, called the Eagle, the command module, which was called Columbia, and the service module. The astronauts were seated in the command module for liftoff and for most of the journey, with the service module supplying the energy, air, and all the other supports to the command module. The lunar module would take Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the surface of the moon and back to the command module again, which was piloted by Michael Collins. Also keep in mind that the moon is a moving target. At launch, the craft was targeted to point toward the moon, where it would be in 3 days' time. And this constant movement had to be accounted for throughout the journey, including the return trip from the moon to the Earth, which here is shown in green. During this video, I will indicate with a star where the Apollo craft is for each of the events explained. And so we begin at 2:22 p.m. Irish time on July 16th. The countdown ended in 3, 2, 1. The rocket lifted clear of the tower, and 2 minutes, 42.5 seconds later, the fuel of stage 1 was spent and it was ejected, along with the launch escape system, which was no longer needed. After a further 6 minutes and 17.5 seconds, the second stage was spent and ejected, and stage 3 fired up and the craft entered Earth orbit, where, after a few final checks, they were good to go for the moon. Soon after this point, the command module and service module detached from the rest of the craft. It turned 180 degrees and then reapproached the rest of the craft, linking with the now exposed lunar module, which is extracted. Then stage 3 was abandoned, and the lunar craft of the lunar module, command module, and supply module headed on its way for a 3-day trip to the moon. When they reached the moon at 21 minutes past 6 in the afternoon of July 19th, they entered orbit. All systems were checked and rechecked, and the astronauts got some much needed rest. And after about 30 orbits of the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin climbed from the command module into the lunar module. and at 6:44 p.m. on July 20th, they detached from the command module, now being piloted by Michael Collins, and they slowly descended to the moon's surface, landing on the surface at approximately 9:17 p.m. on July 20th. After some hours sleep and preparation for the moonwalk, at 3:39 a.m. on the morning of July 21st, they opened the hatch, and at 3 hours 56 minutes 15 seconds precisely, Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon. After a few hours of external moon activity, they returned to the lunar module, and at 6:54 p.m. on July 21st, the top part of the lunar module blasted off back into space, where it rendezvoused with the waiting command module. Once Neil and Buzz crawled back through the connecting tunnel into the command module, the remaining part of the lunar module was ejected, and the astronauts fired up the engine of the service module, and they returned to Earth over a 3-day period. Just before they entered the Earth's atmosphere, the service module was ejected, and now all that was left of the 111 metre tall, 2.8 million kilogram craft was a 3.2 metre high module weighing little over 5,500 kilograms. The rest of the craft was lost in space. The command module entered the atmosphere, and the friction of the air created a huge amount of heat. At 5:44 p.m. on July 24th, the parachutes were deployed, and at 5:51 p.m. the command module splashed down the Pacific Ocean 900 miles southwest of Hawaii, and the mission of Apollo 11 was completed. In our next video, we will find out more about the astronauts themselves and take a closer look at the moon landing itself.